So now we've made it to video number 3 of 3. Congratulations. But maybe I don't even need to do another video for these guys, right? I mean, because it's not like anything significant happened with them after they released the debut album, right? There were no events of importance during the tour for that album or the release of the next album or that tour, right? Sebastian, what do you think? Get the fuck out! All right. Well, in that case, I guess now it's time to talk Slave to the Grind, right? Well, no, not quite yet, but we're definitely getting there. First, though, we've still got some catching up to do because, of course, with this band during this part of their career at the end of the 1980s and into 1990, the stories just keep coming. And I just want to warn everybody right up front, this video may be a long one, even for me, because it's probably the last Skid Row I'm really going to try to tackle, at least for a while. And there really is a ton of stuff still to talk about because I can't just run through the album tracks and leave out all that other stuff that was going on at this point and that has gone on since. And there are going to be several rants during the course of this review. So if you need to catch your breath or just get tired of hearing me talk, which I probably will before I get through all this, then keep in mind you can always take a break and come back later. YouTube is pretty great about letting you pick up where you left off the last time with a video. All right, here we go. Okay, so the debut goes 5 times platinum in the States alone, based partly, mostly, on the strength of its 3 singles, Youth Gone Wild, 18 in Life, and I Remember You. 18 in Life and I Remember You both being top 10 hits for these guys. They tour with Bon Jovi on the New Jersey Syndicate Tour, and then they play the Moscow Music Peace Festival with bands like Cinderella, Gorky Park, Scorpions, Motley Crue, Ozzy, and of course Bon Jovi, which was an absolutely fantastic show that was basically put together to keep our good buddy Doc McGee out of jail for drug trafficking. And please, can somebody explain to me why you need to be drug trafficking when you literally manage pretty much all of these bands? I guess enough really never is enough for some people, is it? We can count on you, Scooby-Doo. I know we'll catch that villain. Anyway, then Skid Row goes out with Motley Crue on the European leg of their Dr. Feelgood tour, and from there goes on to open for Aerosmith on the North American leg of their Pump tour. So yeah, I mean, can you possibly catch another massive break if you're this band? Everything must be going absolutely great, right? Get the fuck out! 2 words. Bottle incident. While on stage opening for Aerosmith in Springfield, Massachusetts on December 27, 1989, Sebastian Bach is hit in the head by a bottle thrown by someone in the front of the crowd. He throws the bottle back, of course, not actually hitting the dickhead who threw the bottle, but instead a poor 17-year-old girl. So then Sebastian jumps into the crowd to beat said dickhead, who, of course, isn't the only one he injures while jumping into the crowd and beating on people. And the whole thing can be seen in the band's 1990 long-form video, Oh Say Can You Scream, which I shared the link to in the debut album review video, so go check that out if you haven't already done so. Now, Bach was arrested immediately following that show, had to pay $10,000 bail, and received 3 years of probation. And if I have an opinion about the bottle thing, and I do, it's this: dick move by everyone that was involved in the incident except the 17-year-old girl who got hit by the bottle when Sebastian threw it back. Oh, but that's not all, of course. No, no, no. Not with these guys. Sebastian? Get the fuck out! 2 more words. T-shirt. Golly, it must be so much fun to be in a band with this guy.
Okay, the thing with the AIDS shirt, okay, like let's just, okay, I'm going to give my statement right here. It's an exclusive. Here it is. The shirt that I was wearing, as you might know, says AIDS. It's like the Raid logo. It's the Raid, Raid. This is pretty harsh. It's the Raid logo on a T-shirt, right? Only instead, and on the Raid logo it says "kills bugs dead" underneath it. Well, this says AIDS kills fags dead. And I said, what's wrong with killing little bundles of wood? No, anyway, nobody gets it on jokes. A kid threw it up on stage. I put it on. And all these people got mad at me. But let me just state this. Here's my statement. I do not know, condone, comprehend, or understand homosexuality in any way, shape, form, or whatever.
Holy shit!
Size. But I do understand that it is not cool to make fun of death, and the loss of a personal friend or loved one is not funny in any way. My grandma died of cancer, and if some moron went around wearing a T-shirt that said "cancer kills grandma's dead" under it, I'd be offended. But I'd also think it was kind of a funny shirt, but I would be offended. So there's my statement. Thank you.
Mr. Sensitivity, Sebastian Bach.
And yeah, I'll put the link to the video for that clip in the description below this video, so you can not only hear but see it. And the bonus footage, Snake sitting right by Sebastian, looking totally uncomfortable as the singer says all this. Finally, in late 1990 and early 91, Skid Row and Michael Wagener go back into the studio, thank God, and record Slave to the Grind, which is released in June of 1991 and debuts at #1, going double platinum without any of the massive radio hits which had been part of the debut album's success. And I do think it's worth mentioning the debut sells 5 million copies in the States alone, while Slave to the Grind only gets to 2 million in the States, which is a pretty significant drop-off. Though, as I said, it was the follow-up that debuts at #1, which means that the album made history when it did so on June 11th, 1991, becoming the first heavy metal album during the SoundScan era to debut at #1 on the Billboard 200. And it certainly wasn't for lack of effort that this thing didn't sell as much as the debut, because there were no less than 5 singles released from Slave to the Grind, which included Monkey Business, Slave to the Grind, Wasted Time, In a Darkened Room, and Quicksand Jesus. The album's cover art was actually a mural painted by Sebastian Bach's father, David Bierk, which is pretty cool. All right, as for the timeline, other hard rock and metal albums that came out in 91 included some pretty heavy hitters, such as and other really mammoth offerings such as Blood Sugar Sex Magic, Bad Motorfinger, 10, and some other album that was so horrible they actually called it Nevermind. Okay, no need to waste a lot of time here. Let's talk tracks. Written by Dave Sabo and Rachel Bolan, I really like this tune. I've always thought it serves a few important purposes on this album right away. One, it starts off with the sort of mellow intro.
Well, outside my window, there's a whole lot of trouble coming. The cartoon killers and the rank of clones.
Which allows us to sort of recognize something slightly familiar right off the bat. That sort of quiet, bluesy, heavy metal thing. But then, two, it quickly kicks in and lets us know this ain't the same album we got the first time. This is a heavy sounding album. And that's hardly me saying the first album wasn't heavy, because it was. But this is just another level. Again, this was the first single and video from the album, too. And in 1991, that sort of makes sense looking back. But I also remember thinking it just sounded more like a second or third single instead, if not later than that, honestly. First never would have occurred to me had I been in the band or been working for the record company. Again, I like it a lot. I've never not liked it a lot, but I don't know that it fits the role of a number one single. But okay, that's cool. Whatever. I still give it 5 stars. Written by Dave Sabo, Rachel Bolan, and Sebastian Bach. According to the January 15th, 2015 Blabbermouth.net article called Producer Michael Wagener Looks Back on Making of Skid Row's Slave to the Grind, Wagener said, "Before we went to Florida, we went into a fairly big studio in New Jersey and pretty much recorded the whole record. We made a good demo, so to speak. The funny thing is, the song Slave to the Grind is from that session. It was recorded and mixed in about an hour, and that's what you're hearing on the record. It was never even remixed. 1 hour, it was recorded. Everything is live on there." Vocalist Sebastian Bach backed Wagener's telling of the details up in 2017 when he agreed that the version of the title track included on the finished album is actually that original demo from pre-production. The band did record the song again during the album sessions, but couldn't match the intensity of the demo and decided to use it instead. Now, for me, the first thing I noticed about this album was probably the same thing everyone else noticed, particularly when we all heard this title track for the first time. this was a heavier, darker album. That was the plan, Wagener also said in the Blabbermouth article. Every band at that time would say, oh, our next album is way heavier, but we did it. We followed that route. Let's stick to being Skid Row, but let's make it a little tougher, a little harder. We still had the ballads on there. They were maybe not quite as sappy as on the first record, but it also didn't sell as many copies as the first record because the housewives that like the ballads, they're buying the records, but it's still an amazing album. And I do have to admit, it took me a little time to adjust to how heavy this song is, to wrap my head around that the first several times I heard it. Because unlike most of my friends back in the mid to late 80s, I just never got into the whole thrash and speed metal scene when it started. I just didn't care for that stuff. Mostly still don't. That's just me, but it's me. And the first time I heard the song Slave to the Grind, that's definitely what it sounded like to me. I wouldn't say the same thing now, but I remember feeling that way back in 91. And I definitely warmed to it. It's absolutely one of my 3 favorite tracks on this album today, and has been pretty much since right after it came out. But again, it just took a little time for me to get there. But my God, what a track. And having just said all that, as contradictory as this is going to sound, I think this absolutely should have been the first single and video from the album, just because it's so big and heavy and menacing. I mean, this thing really just punches you in the fucking face the first time you hear it. This is this album's painkiller, if you get my drift. It just makes an incomparable statement right away with teeth. Now, again, I understand them going with Monkey Business instead as the first single because it's a little more familiar style, maybe, and you want to let people get their toes in the water just a tad before you rip their faces off and shove them in the pool with the title track. I can see that. I still don't really think of Monkey Business as the obvious first single, but again, whatever. When I think about it, really think about it, I'm honestly just not sure there is an obvious first single from this album. But again, 2 million copies. It seems to have worked out just fine for them. So definitely 5 stars for Slave to the Grind for me. Now, just one more thing I really need to say before moving on. Holy crap, what a vocal. Written by Dave Sabo and Rachel Bolan. Another track, another 5 stars. Great song. Probably my 4th favorite track on the album. This band is just on fire here.
She caught the melting sky. It burned, but still the winter passes by and by to the other side. A slow parade of wind that blows through trees that wilt and with the season's children.
again written by Sabo and Bolan. And then somebody just goes and pees on the fire. And they don't quite put it out, but they do make me want to back up a step or two for sure. No, I'm not saying this is a bad song by any means. I just never really want to listen to it, honestly. I don't. You can. It's a good tune. Good vocal, of course. But this song does raise a question that after this track, I'm afraid I'm going to be asking for the rest of the album, except for one track from side 2. And that question is, what's the deal with these lyrics anyway? I mean, I like them okay. They're okay lyrics for the most part. Some of them are fantastic, right? But is it just me, or do the lyrics on this album come across as someone just trying a little too hard to be a great lyricist? Because that's how they honestly make me feel. The music is fantastic. The songs are mostly fantastic. The guitars are fantastic. The rhythm section is fantastic. The lyrics on pretty much 3/4 of the album just leave me scratching my head and saying, huh? I do still love most of these songs, but if you want me to review these albums, then you're going to have to accept that I'm going to say what I feel. And that's something this album makes me feel. Confused as fuck. There are other opinions out there, and that's fine. I imagine there's a lot of people who love the lyrics on this album, and you go right ahead. You have every right to feel that way. And hey, you know what? Cool tune. All right. But I'm docking it a star, though. It gets 4 stars. Written by Rachel Bolan. And the slide continues, at least for me. 3 stars. And yes, I realize I'm likely the only person on the entire earth who feels that way about this tune, and I'm okay with that. It's perfectly fine. That's what 3 stars means. But again, I don't identify with these lyrics in any way, and they leave me confused and frustrated and missing the debut album. I wish they didn't, but they do. And I just never really got too excited about the song either. I don't know what's wrong with me. Call a doctor. Now, if I'm talking about Slave to the Grind, obviously, I have to keep in mind there are 2 different versions of this album. The one that I believe is pretty much considered the standard correct version is the quote-unquote dirty version with track 6, Get the Fuck Out, written by Dave Sabo and Rachel Bolan. And I like the tune okay. I definitely understand these lyrics, and I'm going to give the song 4 stars, but the 4th is a bit iffy for me, just being honest. It could have been 3. Track 6, Beggar's Day. written by Sabo, Bolan, and Bach. And since I rated this one the same as that one, it wouldn't have made any difference anyway. Again, 4 stars. I really dig this song, though. And yes, I actually prefer this song to Get the Fuck Out by miles, in fact. I'll have more to say about that in just a bit, but for now, I'll just say that I think Beggar's Day absolutely should have been on all the copies of this album. Like most of the album, I honestly have almost no idea what the song is about, but in this case, I still really dig it. Okay, and now we've come to the part of the album that really is going to get me into trouble with fans of this band. Because now we have 2 songs in a row that I just haven't ever really cared for. Track 7, Livin' on a Chain Gang, written by Sabo and Bolan, and track 8, Creepshow, written by Bolan, Scotti Hill, and Rob Affuso. And while I really like this riff in Creepshow, and I love that cowbell, I gave both of these songs 3 stars, and they were lucky it wasn't 2. I just never cared about these tracks. I tried and tried to get into them and just never could. So now I skip them every time I listen to the album, which is honestly far less often because of these songs. And while I'm at it, that little bit more I said I'd have to say about Beggar's Day and Get the Fuck Out is this. I wish they'd both been on the album instead of either one of these 2 tracks. That decision just made no sense to me, but that's how it goes sometimes. To me, these tracks pretty much make all the difference in this album and the debut, because I never really thought of the debut as having any filler. Though there may have been a couple of tracks some people could possibly say that about if they really wanted to, I guess. While I absolutely feel these are both filler tracks, and I always have. I don't know. Sorry, I guess. But the heart wants what the heart wants, as they say, and this just wasn't what the heart wanted. They aren't anywhere close to terrible, mind you. I just think they pale compared to the rest of what I consider to be a fantastic album. If you feel differently, hey, that's great. I wish I did. I just don't.
Beyond the reach of God's faith lies the wounded, the shattered remains of love betrayed.
Written by Sabo, Bolan, and Bach. Okay, I gave this song 5 stars. I question that a little bit from time to time, but I kept it that way because even when I think these lyrics might be just a bit questionable, that vocal easily makes up for it if that is the case. Speaking of which, I know I already talked quite a lot about Sebastian as a vocalist during the debut album review, but just to continue that very briefly, I will say that this is one of my favorite vocal albums of all time, no matter what the lyrics are. And I could have gone with 4 stars for this track because I really just don't think we needed 3 big, epic power ballads on any album at this point. But I do find myself enjoying the act of listening to this one far more than at least 4 other tracks on Slave to the Grind. And that has to count for something too. And now, with that said, and a streak of less than favorable track ratings finally behind us at this point, we finally quit fucking around and get back down to business with my favorite track on the album by 4,000 miles.
I never wanted to be president because it's nothing but an ego trip, yeah. I didn't want your education because it's nothing but a pile of shit. You bore me to death, so shut up for God's sake. Stop reading me the riot act while my brains are still intact. You say it's raining, but you're pissing down my back, so stop reading me the riot act.
Written by Sabo and Bolan. Amazing music, fantastic lyrics, incredible vocal. Five stars. I could literally listen to this song all day long on repeat and never stop banging my head or smiling.
I ain't the child of your disgrace, but a kicker in my face. I feel the world's been crucified. I can't.
Written by Bolan, Hill, and Bach. 5 stars. Another great track. Lyrics I can understand and identify with a little bit. Music and vocals I enjoy the hell out of every time I hear them. And the final track on the album, track 12, Wasted Time.
You and I together in our lives, sacred ties will never fray. Then why can't I let myself tell lies and watch you die every day? I think back to the times when dreams were what mattered. But the horse stampedes and rages in the name of desperation. Is it all just wasted time? Can you look at yourself when you think of what you left behind? Is it all?
Written by Sabo, Bolan, and Bach. 5 stars. I'm pretty sure this has been one of my top 3 favorite tracks on this album since the day it came out back in 1991. The music and lyrics I really love, and one of the greatest vocal performances I can think of on any album.
Can you live with yourself when you think of what you've left to me?
This vocal performance is the closest one to rivaling the vocal on I Remember You, in my opinion, as far as taking full advantage of Sebastian's vocal qualities. And some of these melodies in this song are just stunning.
Can you feel inside your heart as it's bleeding? Why can't you believe you can be loved? Walking, screaming agony, and the horse they are beats and rages in the name of desperation. You live with yourself when you think of what you've left behind. Let me down, but the horse damn beats and rages in the name of desperation. Can you live with yourself when you think of what you've left behind? The sun will rise again, the earth will turn to sand, creation's colors seem to fade to gray. You'll see the sickly hands of time will write your final rhyme and end our memory.
Okay, so that's the album. That's a total of 52 stars for the album, divided by 12 tracks instead of 11 this time, which equals a 4.33 star rating for the album. And since the debut scored 4.64, that means I technically think a little bit more of the debut than Slave to the Grind. However, I would say this. The debut is a stronger album from track 1 through track 11 overall, while I think Slave to the Grind is a little more hit and miss at times, but has some of the strongest songs in the catalog. And yeah, a few I just don't get. I honestly think of Slave to the Grind as the superior album of the two in a lot of ways, until I dig a little deeper into the individual songs for something like this. And then some of them just don't hold up because the debut seems a lot more consistent to me. But I'm quite sure many of you will disagree, and that's absolutely fine. You go right ahead and tell me so if that's how you feel, which I'm sure you will. As always, if my opinions are different than yours when I give them to you, it's not me saying you're wrong. It's just that we're not twins. Now, I want to take a minute here to talk about the album's producer, Michael Wagener, before we move on to a different topic that I really do feel I must cover in this video, since it's possibly the last one I'll be doing on these guys, at least for now. I had forgotten that Michael Wagener produced both of these first two albums until I pulled this one out the other day to get ready for this review. Bob Rock produced the band's third full-length studio album, Subhuman Race. But when I listened to Slave to the Grind, it almost sounds like this was the one Bob Rock produced to me. And believe me, that's me giving Michael Wagener a huge compliment because I think a lot of Bob Rock as a producer. And I talked about how great I thought the first album sounded in that review. But this album, to my ear, does sound even better, heavier, more powerful. And I guess I apparently just really love a Michael Wagener production. Now for my first rant. if there wasn't already a couple back earlier. On another subject, I'm very happy to say I did just get this yesterday because it was affordable and because it's a single vinyl, as it should be, as it originally was. Thank you for that, because I've always wanted to have this thing, and now I finally do. Because it wasn't unnecessarily split into two records the way Slave to the Grind has been, which is why I don't have that one. Because I guess I learned my lesson when I was finally buying the Bon Jovi vinyls last year during that review session, and realized that I'm apparently too fucking lazy to get up and flip a record every 3 songs. I really, really, really hate having to do that, to the point that I've avoided buying certain albums that I would love to have. Some of those, even what I would consider my Deserted Island albums, because I'm not paying $10 to $20 more per album just so I can do more work, when all I really want to do is be able to enjoy an album. In fact, after ordering this one, I went online to buy all 12 glorious tracks of Slave to the Grind, but stopped myself because of the whole double vinyl thing and wound up giving my money to someone else for a 13-track single slab of Darkened vinyl instead. And then I sat back and just laughed and laughed and laughed. Ha ha ha. Because I don't like being manipulated. And if you want me to give you my money for a double vinyl, I'll be thrilled to do that, because I absolutely love a good double vinyl when it's actually a double album. Otherwise, if it's up to me, that shit's just going to sit there on your website or in your store and gather dust for the next 100 years. And you know what? That crap's not on these bands. It's certainly not on Skid Row, because they don't own these masters yet, which means it's on the record company who still owns them. But the great news is Skid Row should own those masters soon, very soon, because it's now been 35 years for the debut. And I don't know every detail of how that works, but I do know that's when they get control of it again, at least for the debut. I guess that means we'll possibly still have to wait a few more years for a version of Slave to the Grind that I can stand to buy for my collection. And hopefully, we'll also finally get Oh Say Can You Scream on DVD and or Blu-ray, which the band has been wanting to put out for years, but can't because of the record company owning it. Moving on, I know Skid Row did an EP after this, and then one more studio album with this same lineup. But for whatever reason, I just had other shit going on at those times, and to be completely honest with you guys and gals, I've never heard either of those albums. Now, I did obviously go and check out their cover of Kiss's Come On and Love Me from the covers EP they did in 92, but that's pretty much it. I don't know why. I guess I was just in a different place by then, doing other things, trying to figure out how to be a grown-up and all that stuff. Since I've been sitting here doing these reviews, I have decided it might be a good time to give those albums, the ones with Sebastian still in the band, a chance finally. And if I do that and I have any thoughts about those experiences, I may come back and talk about those thoughts at some point. But in the meantime, I figure this may be my only real chance to talk about Sebastian's departure from the band with a bunch of Skid Row fans. So I'm going to do that now. The departure of Sebastian Bach from Skid Row over the decades since it took place has proven to be one of the most traumatic events in hard rock history, apparently, in my mind. I say that because the more time has passed, the more upset I continue to become about the event. And the fact that these guys have never bothered to reconcile, which I guess I always believed they eventually would. Okay, so looking back, what happened exactly? What was the cause of the split?
I mean, really, the fact, dude, the fact.
Well, as is usually the case with these situations, I guess it depends a little on where you go for those answers. Now, in case you don't recall, Skid Row fired Sebastian Bach in late 1996. And to hear producer Michael Wagener tell it, young kids become extremely famous. That goes to your head. All of a sudden, you're invincible and stuff just happens. And if they think they're invincible, they do things that might not really work in the end. I think some of that was going on. It wasn't really good for the band. Some of the stuff that was said about record companies, executives, and stuff like that. And then Snake and Rachel had to make up for it and go play golf with the guys, you know? And it got to the point that it got so out of hand that they said, you know what? Forget it. It's not worth it anymore. And all that anger and all that animosity and stuff that we have to deal with, it's not worth it. He continued, I talked to Rachel 3 or 4 years later because I did more records with them. And I said, is a reunion with Sebastian ever going to happen again? And he said, no. As long as I have a slice of bread on my table, no. Wagener then added, I think we could have at least 2 more massive albums with Skid Row. But to them, their sanity was more important. To hear the band members tell it, the strained relations between Bach and the rest of the group started with the Subhuman Race recording sessions, partly due to a change in direction of the album's material, and also partly due to working with new producer Bob Rock, when some members of the band still wanted to work with Wagener because they'd already had massive success with him and what's been described as a more fun time in the studio. According to the 2012 interview with Legendary Rock Interviews, which I found in a 2019 BraveWords.com article called Sebastian Bach on his split from Skid Row, I was 100% fired from the band. Legendary Rock Interviews asked, I'm not going to ask you about recording Wasted Time or Big Guns, but I want to clear up a misconception, which is amazingly still reported as fact all these years later. And that's the fact that some people still say you left Skid Row. That pisses me off because I'm a huge fan of Kiss and Skid Row and have heard the story of how you got into it with them over Rachel not wanting to do the Kiss Alive Worldwide tour in 1996. Then they turned around, of course, and did the farewell tour with Kiss, which had to be even more frustrating. Sebastian Bach, it was. Of course it was. And the reason they did that tour without me is because Doc works for Kiss and Snake works for Doc, and that's their whole scene. But I was 100% fired from the band. They sent me some new music, and I told them straight up, I didn't like it, and I wanted us to write some more because I wasn't going to sing those songs. They got all mad, and Doc called me and said, Well, you have to sing it because you're the singer in the band, Sebastian. To which I said, well, if you like it, then you sing it. I didn't get into this business to sing music that I don't like just to put something out. I told those guys, I don't know about you, Mr. Rock Band guitarist and bassist, but I didn't get into this rock and roll band to play songs that suck. As for the rest of that info, it turns out that there apparently was a time when Bach had committed Skid Row to opening for Kiss on their reunion tour, which, by the way, was the biggest tour of the years 1996 and 97. But the other guys in the band told Bach Skid Row was too big to be an opening act and that they were not going to do the show. And so, naturally, Bach reportedly left a message on Snake's answering machine telling him the band would never be too big to open for Kiss, which I would absolutely agree with, by the way, and shouting a number of insults, which resulted in Snake telling Bach later that he would never work with him again. For his part, according to Ultimate Classic Rock's Why Subhuman Race Tore Skid Row Apart from Sebastian Bach, Bach said in 2014, I would love to do something when he was asked about the potential for any events or reissues celebrating the 25th anniversary of Skid Row's debut album. My former bandmates are like, nah, we're playing a bowling alley. We're happy. We don't care. Wait a minute. I have to back up a second. These guys had the opening gig on Kiss's Alive Worldwide tour, the biggest tour of 1996 and 97, already arranged and turned it down? I never knew any of this happened. But let's think about this for a minute. Skid Row has already opened for Bon Jovi on their New Jersey tour, the biggest tour of that band's career, and then the GNR tour for their Use Your Illusion records, basically the biggest tour of their careers, and then could have gone out with Kiss for the Alive Worldwide tour, pretty much the biggest tour of all time for this genre of music. And they said no. Let's think this through. So you're pissed that the singer has made this decision and arranged things, at least tentatively, without your knowledge, which I totally get, by the way. That is completely out of line and should never happen without the whole band being consulted. I get that. But then you decide that Skid Row of 1996 is too big to open for Kiss on that tour? Okay, let's see here. The cover EP, Beside Ourselves, barely squeaks its way to going gold. That's in 92. Subhuman Race doesn't even do that in 95. And as far as I know, is still not gold. So in 96, it's basically been 5 years since you guys sold any fucking albums. You get this opportunity and immediately turn it down? This was your second golden ticket, fellas. This was it. After Nirvana and grunge, and you're basically one of the only 80s hard rock and metal bands still around, and you turn this down? You go out there and open for Kiss on that tour, and you can pull yourselves up out of this slide you're already on. You can sell records again. You can potentially help revive this genre of music for all of us. And you refuse? Look, as far as Sebastian doing all this without your knowledge, as I said, I get why you're not happy about that. But you talk to him about it. You have Doc talk to him about it. You have the record label talk to him about it. You straighten all that out with him and make it good. But you also must be told by Doc and the record label that even though you don't like the way it happened, your singer made the right decision. This is exactly what you need right now. Exactly. Skid Row can be right back up on top again, right now. And you go out there and you play the first two albums and you remind the world who and what this band is, and you earn yourself the fan interest you've lost over the past 5 years again. It's a get out of jail free card. Oh, but instead, because you're pissed that the singer did the right thing without asking your permission first, and because you think you're still too big to open for Kiss at this point, it would be a mistake to do the tour? Let me tell you guys something that even someone like me can see as plain as day in 1996. The only bands that are too big to open that reunion tour for Kiss are bands like Bon Jovi and Van Halen and Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. And that's pretty much it. You can add a couple other names to the list if you like, that's fine. But you get the point. Skid Row is firmly not on that list in 1996. By this point, I'm not even paying attention to Skid Row anymore. Like I already said, I don't even know any of this stuff happened back then until basically today. I didn't buy the EP. I didn't buy Subhuman Race. I didn't even really consider buying either one of those. And that was when they still had Sebastian. But by that point, I was in my 20s with a job and a family and a lot of other shit that demanded my attention. So I wasn't exactly reading rock magazines anymore and keeping up on all this stuff. But if I'd seen that these guys were going out with Kiss for that reunion tour, I might have paid attention to that. And I might have even gone out and bought that EP and that album and the next one. And I know it's hindsight, but here's a tiny bit of advice that I wish I could have somehow given you fellas at that moment. Anytime you have a chance to go out and open for a band who's announcing their tour in full makeup and full costume from an aircraft carrier, you say yes. You run to a phone and you say yes. And if you ask me, well, I wasn't there and I don't know any of these guys, and this is 1000% conjecture on my part, the only reason this band turns down that gig with Kiss is because they're thinking with their dicks instead of their brains and their hearts. That's the closest analogy I can come up with. This is all ego. And even that barely makes any sense to let happen because you're not drawing in 95 or 96 anyway. You're already done. You just haven't realized it yet. But apparently the singer realized it because he tried to go out and do something about it, while you were apparently still busy sitting around trying to figure out more ways to commit career suicide. And great job, fellas. You nailed it. Okay, end of that rant, I think. Anyway, moving on. Now, I always sort of thought the trouble began way before Subhuman Race, honestly. So I'm just going to toss a couple of other possibilities out there. And to do it, I'm going to backtrack to a bit of information we got straight from Sebastian himself that I used in my last review. First, I think these guys just got sick of the bad behaviors from their singer, who was putting them in awkward position after awkward position with the nonstop shit he was pulling on stage and off. Specifically, the bottle, the t-shirt, the interviews, the offensive comments about other bands and the record company and the executives, just all of that shit. If you're one of the other guys in this band, when all this shit happens, you don't get a moment of a day without having to answer for something stupid your singer said or did. And since you're in the same band, it's like being in the same family with the village idiot, and that shit's rub off on you too now. And you didn't do anything. That's the sort of shit that can wear on a friendship in a hurry. Second, and look, this is totally conjecture on my part, totally. But I do sometimes wonder if these other guys, the band founders and songwriters, and the ones who did all the early legwork it took to get these guys to the point where all they needed was that one final piece to get signed, if they didn't just get sick to death of seeing Sebastian's face plastered all over their hard work. And obviously, Sebastian was doing work too, and was a huge piece of what actually finally got them signed. But what I'm saying is, if you feel like you did most of the work before this guy was even around, and you put it all together for this guy to front, then maybe you want some credit and some attention too. And suddenly, you look up, you look down, you look left, you look right, forward, back, and all you see anywhere is the singer. Because make absolutely no mistake, Sebastian was the key to this whole thing. And if these other guys were a little jealous of Sebastian getting all the attention and all the magazine covers and his face being plastered over everything on the planet, then my only bit of possible advice to them would probably be, next time, maybe don't hire a supermodel to be the singer. And third,
So we had a big meeting with the lawyer Michael Guido, who's now Jay-Z's like right-hand business guy. He was our lawyer then. And I said, I'm quitting unless we're redoing the whole thing with Bon Jovi, and I get 25% of everything in the band. And there's 5 guys in the band, so that was kind of ballsy. But they said okay.
now again, that may not have been a direct reason for anyone else to want Sebastian out of the band. But when I think about it, combined with all the other shit, the fact that Dave and Rachel wrote most of these songs and apparently weren't even getting paid their appropriate percentage of the publishing that they should have gotten because they're the songwriters, because the singer, who contributed a little bit to the writing, but obviously not a huge amount, but who was the only guy in the band who was evidently smart enough, honestly, to say, hey, what the hell? Why is Bon Jovi getting all our money? I'm not doing this. I'm pretty sure that Dave and Rachel, who just happen to be the most vocal guys in the band these days about never wanting Sebastian around anymore, to this day, would be the ones who might feel they had the most to benefit from getting rid of Sebastian, simply because they were pissed. Again, when they were probably already sick and tired of dealing with all the constant bullshit they were subjected to because of the singer's mouth. And again, that is all just a purely theoretical stab in the dark by me. I don't know any of that to be true. And all I'm really saying is, as much as I love him, and I do, believe me, Sebastian might not have helped himself out at almost any step along the way. But at this point, I'm also going to say something that I feel very, very strongly about. And I'm talking directly to Dave and Rachel and Scotti here, because Sebastian has already said multiple times that he can let bygones be bygones, and he would really love to reconcile with these guys and make things right again so they can get back to being relevant. Meanwhile, drummer Rob Affuso has remained in contact with everyone in the band's classic lineup since leaving the band, and has pushed all along to have Sebastian back in the band, to the extent that he has said repeatedly he would love to be back in the band, but that he will only come back if they bring Sebastian back. And what I'm going to say to Dave and Rachel and Scotti is this. When do you guys finally just grow the fuck up and be adults and forget all the petty, stupid little bullshit you've allowed to destroy your career? And yeah, I know you've continued to record and tour, and I also know that nothing has ever been the same for any of you for a single second since you made the mistake of your lives in late 1996. And I also saw Kiss twice during that farewell tour in 2000-2001 when you opened for them, like you should have when Sebastian tried to hook that up for their reunion tour just a few years earlier. And then maybe all this bullshit could have been completely avoided. And then maybe I would have actually stayed in my seat and watched you guys open for Kiss instead of using that time at both shows to go out and look at posters and t-shirts from the Kiss booths to try to decide what I wanted to bring home with me. Both shows. And I know it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but again, the heart wants what the heart wants. And my heart apparently still wants Skid Row to mean you guys and Sebastian and Rob, or nothing. And there it is. Okay. Appreciate you sticking out through that. Sorry about being long-winded, but we've all been thinking about this shit for decades, right? I know I have. So, to summarize, I don't mean to sound like I feel anything but love for Slave to the Grind, because even though I do have some critical thoughts about it, to accuse me of not loving this album would just be wrong. It's a fantastic album from a fantastic band at a fantastic moment in their history. And when I think of the album, I have a lot of really great memories. And if I just have the album playing while I go through my day, or while I'm cleaning house or doing yard work, or while I'm in the car driving somewhere, I'm as happy as can be. But when I sit down and really concentrate on the album and dig a little deeper, that's when I will admit that I can find what might be considered some little flaws here and there. And one of those flaws, the most significant one in my mind, is that when I compare these two albums, the debut just makes me feel young and happy and exuberant and excited and nostalgic and like I'm actually having fun. And when I listen to Slave to the Grind, while it's an absolutely great album, sometimes it just feels a little bit like my parents handed me a thesaurus and told me to sit down and find some new words I didn't know before and learn how to properly use them in a sentence, or I'm grounded. And that means I don't get to go have sex with my girlfriend that weekend. And finally, to wrap up the Skid Row content on this channel for now, I'd just like to leave you all with a thought from my favorite TV show that I think says exactly what I would really love to say to these guys if I had a chance to get them all together in a room and thank them for what they gave us and try to encourage them to give us more.
I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them.
See you next time, Hard Rockers. Out.